5. Start with roll call. Chase Shu, President.
Jordan Chiding, Vice President.
Daniel Pretzer, Senator.
Crystal Lee Belt, Senator.
Marshall Bolte, Senator.
Timothy Yoder, Senator.
Oh.
Okay.
Do the approval of the minutes.
I just gave an overview of them, right?
So you just read through them.
Okay, last week's meeting was called to order at 4:04 with me, Chase, Pretzer, and Smith all present. Smith was present on the phone. Officer reports, Shu had nothing. I talked about NDSA and getting in contact with Caleb. Advisor reports, Norm discussed NDSA and freshman elections. Amanda had nothing. There was no business. New businesses that we nominated Senators Carissa, Tim, and Marshall, and Melanie. All passed their nominations. Announcements, contact info was taken, and lowrider was announced, and freshman elections was talked about. Meeting was adjourned at 4:16 p.m.
Senator Pretzer.
I move to approve last week's minutes.
30 seconds. Okay. Is there any discussion on that? Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. Minutes passed. Okay. Officer reports. I have 2 sign-up sheets I'm going to pass around. The first one is for the election table on Tuesday the 12th. We have 3-hour spots, 1 at 11, 1 at 12, and 1 at 1. These are for the freshman elections, and I left 2 spots open, so we got 2 people at the table at a time. And then the second one is our table that we're going to have set up on Wednesday the 13th from 10 to 2. And I just have 1-hour slots for that, for the table. If you can make a time, somebody's already filled their name in, you can add your name, or if you need to only be there for, if you can only be there for a short amount of time, just write that on the sheet as well. And then freshman elections are,
Do you
of
have a
course,
pen?
I have it.
Thanks.
Yes, I do.
Thanks, Norm.
You can just pass it with the sheet.
and with freshman elections on Tuesday weekend, we still need more applications. So if you guys know any freshmen who would be interested in this, tell them there are write-in spots available on the ballots, and have them come by and write their name in and vote for themselves or for other people. And that's kind of all I have.
I don't have anything to report.
Okay, advisory reports.
Nothing that you haven't already talked about for me.
Same.
Okay. New business. We're going to go over briefly, or is it just going to be in depth? Yes.
I have a question. So are we required to sign up for both?
If you have time that you could do, that would be awesome.
For both or just one?
If you're available for both, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just like a quick question, would we just be like sitting there handing out applications, or?
For the election one on Tuesday, we're giving out ballots. You'd just be being like making sure they're a freshman, getting their ID, make sure they're actually a student here, and then giving them a ballot so they can vote. Making sure, and then like we keep track of, just write their names down, not with the ballot, but so like they don't come back later and try to vote twice.
Okay.
So that's pretty much all it is. So, and then for the other one on Wednesday, it's a community fair, so there's going to be us and several other organizations in town that have tables, and we're going to have like stuff to promote SGA, let people know who we are, that we're here on campus to serve them. So just kind of a way to meet students and they can put a face to SGA. So.
Sure. new business, are you briefly going over, or is it more in-depth?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go over some basics, but I can do it, after announcements, that way there's
Okay.
just kind of the last thing we do.
Okay, so we'll be going over Robert's rules after the announcements. That'll be part of the new business. Is there any other new business? Senator Fetzer?
I move to start the meetings at 4:05 instead of 4 o'clock. Just because I'm in jazz combo.
Okay. Is there a second?
Sure.
Any discussion on moving the meeting to 4:05?
No, but will we be done by 4:30 on most days?
On most days, we should be, if there's, as we kind of get later in the school year, and there's occasionally like bigger things that have been going on in the background, and once they're brought forth, things could go long. But
Okay.
since the state legislature is not in session this year, there shouldn't really be any like major state laws or anything that we need to talk about or get opinions on, so it should be usually by 4:30.
Probably just the budget time.
Yeah, near the end of the year when we start discussing budget, those might run longer, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senator Fetzer?
the reason why we should do this is because I'm in a class that goes until 4 o'clock. And I mean, on the schedule, it says 3:50, but it requires like takedown, and that usually takes like over 10 minutes. And a lot of times we've been going over that class time, so I feel like it would only make sense to just delay it 5 minutes so I'm not late to every single senator meeting.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of moving the meeting times to 4:05 instead of 4, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passed. Is there any other new business? Seeing none, we'll go to announcements. Freshman elections again are on Tuesday, 12th. The sign-up sheet's going around for heat at the table for voting. And C.L. Lindsay is giving a presentation or speech at Nisi Auditorium on sex and the law on Tuesday the 12th at both 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. That's kind of all we have for announcements.
Well, then,
Switch spots.
yeah, who wants to switch spots? And then I have my PowerPoint on that laptop. But, finish up what you're doing here, right? I should have picked this up to make sure it was. All right, so has anybody ever used like parliamentary procedure before, like in FFA or student government or student council or anything in high school?
Yes, sir.
That's totally fine. That's why we're gonna go over it. Basically, I'm gonna go over some of the basics today because we're gonna have to go over this stuff again when we have our new freshmen come in. But I just want you guys to kind of have a head start on this stuff. So, all right. So, I'm not always the best presenter when it comes to PowerPoints. I'm just going to read through them. Stop me at any time, ask any questions if you have them. Just feel free to shout them out, don't even raise your hand. But basically what a parliamentary procedure is, this is the method that any deliberative body, which is what you guys are, utilizes to expedite our business. So anytime we make motions, like Daniel made a motion earlier to change the meeting time, he was using parliamentary procedure in order to do that. And so there's specific rules that govern how our procedure functions, and so I'm just going to kind of go over them, why we have them, and what they accomplish. So as the elected body of BSC students, we want to make sure that we uphold several principles of democracy. The first one is that the leaders are elected by the people. That's why we have elections in the spring and in the fall. All of the members are equal. So none of you are more important than another person in the room. The majority rules, but the rights of the minority are protected. So what that means is that in the end, whatever the majority of people want is what we get, but that everybody has the right to speak their opinions and make sure that they're able to be heard. Our organization is run impartially and fairly, which means at the very top level, Chase calls on everybody regardless of whether he likes you or doesn't. And decisions are made in a spirit of openness and transparency. So nobody has like hidden agendas. Everybody's free to be able to say what they want to say. Some of the principles in order for our meetings to run smoothly is that we're only discussing one piece of business at a time. For example, while we were doing minutes, it would have been very inappropriate for Daniel to try to introduce a motion to change the meeting times. So we only do one thing at a time. It's also important that we are courteous and impartial, and that we protect equality. So it's not okay to call each other names during the meeting, to accuse people of having ulterior motives, personal gain. For impartiality, it's important that, again, Chase calls on everybody. He doesn't really express his opinion. He lets the Senate work that out. Like I said earlier, majority rules, but everyone's rights are protected. And probably most importantly, that there's always a quorum of senators present. So that means a majority of the senators always need to be present in order to discuss anything. So it's not fair for Chris to be the only one to show up and to make all the decisions for you guys. Any questions so far? Cool. So discussing one piece of business at a time, what this means is that only one main motion can be on the floor at a time, and we'll talk about what a main motion is in a little bit. And then any motions that modify that, such as minor amendments, things like that, have to pertain to the main motion on the floor, and each motion is dealt with separately, so there's a separate vote on every single thing that we do. Preserving courtesy and impartiality. So only the presiding officer, which is usually going to be Chase, occasionally it will be Jordan, only he may call a meeting to order. So Marshall can't walk in and be like, meeting starts right now because I'm here, and then start conducting business. Members are not allowed to speak until they've been recognized, so Chase needs to call on you. Members refer to each other in the third person, so basically that means, Chris is talking to Daniel. Really, she'll say Senator Pretzer, and she'll do most of her talking through Chase. And then the discussion always remains on the issue, not on personalities or motives. So the issue of changing the meeting time, it would have been inappropriate to be like, well, Daniel sucks, so we're not going to have a meeting at 4:05 because we don't like Daniel. So that makes sense? Cool. You guys all look like zombies right now. Ruling by majority. Some important things in order to accomplish this. Members must be notified of all meetings. So, for example, after this meeting, it'll be important for us to make sure that the senators who weren't present are aware of the time change, even though it's a very minor time change. Everybody who's a member of the organization has a right to know when and where all of the meetings are going to be. Any situations which diminish the rights of other members require 2/3 vote, and we'll talk about what some of those motions could be. And members cannot require a higher vote than is necessary. So you can't say, well, we want a unanimous vote on time change. It only requires a majority vote. So you can't require more votes than necessary. When there's non-members present, so as we get farther in the school year, there might be people who come to view our meetings or to present us like a side topic, a guest speaker. So it's important to remember that our meetings are open to the public. Anybody who lives and breathes can come to our meeting. But non-members don't have the right to speak unless they're given that right by the presiding officer. So like when our guest speakers come in, we'll usually have somebody from the MAC that's going to come in at some point and talk about the MAC. they have a right to talk about the MAC, because that's what Chase invites them for, but they can't talk for the rest of the meeting unless they're given permission. The assembly can pass a motion to exclude non-members from a portion of the meeting, especially if non-members are being disruptive and like protesting and coming in and making it impossible for us to do our work. And any non-member has a duty to obey any orders that are given to them while they're in the meeting. So when it comes to presenting your business, generally the official rules are that you stand and be acknowledged, but since this room is kind of tight and small, raising your hand just so that Chase can see that you want to speak. You wait for him to acknowledge you. You present whatever your motion is to everybody. You have your motion seconded. That just means that somebody else calls out second, and that allows the discussion to proceed. After discussion is done, you vote. So it's that simple. Just a couple of notes. Motions can't violate local, state, or federal law. Motions must be in compliance with the SGA Constitution, which I'll hand out copies of that next week. I just need to make photocopies. They can't violate any BSC or NDUS policy, so a motion, for example, to bring vodka to every meeting violates BSC policy, so that would be out of order. And motions cannot act outside the scope of our organization, so, for example, buying puppies for the Humane Society, that's not why SGA exists, so that motion would not be allowed. Any questions so far? I'm just going to go through a couple more slides, and then I'll be done for today. When you're discussing the motion, it's also important that you raise your hand to be recognized by Chase. That way only one person is speaking at a time, and it doesn't turn into a yelling match or people trying to fight each other for the right to speak. The person who makes the motion has the right to speak first. Members are not allowed to speak more than twice on the same motion in the same day. And you can't use your second speaking time until everyone's at least had the chance to speak if they want to. You can speak for up to 10 minutes on each turn. We've never in SGA had anybody speak for 10 minutes on one motion. And so, even though you have the right, let's try not to have to do that this year. And then the discussion has to remain relevant to the pending motion. For voting on the motion, it's really important that votes are taken fairly, impartially, and accurately. That anybody who is a voting member, who all of you except for Chase and Jordan are voting members, if you want to vote, you're allowed to vote. And that when Chase says the motion passed, that's an accurate statement. Or if he says the motion fails, that's an accurate statement and actually represents the way the members voted. There's a couple different ways that you can vote. It usually comes down to whatever Chase wants, unless it's specifically requested that a different form of voting is used. What he's been using is the voice vote, yeas, nays, yes, no. You can vote by showing of hands. A rising vote is when you literally stand up to cast your vote. That's usually used if there's something that needs a 2/3 majority. You can vote by secret ballot. And then unanimous consent, which is essentially asking if anybody objects. If there are no objections, the motion could be passed. Kind of like at a wedding when they're like, are there any objections? And if there are none, married. That's how it works, I think. So. I'm just going to go with a list of different kinds of motions, and then I'll be done. But basically there's 14 different kinds of motions, and we do have cheat sheets, which I'll bring next week, the little laminated copies that tell you everything you need to know about a motion. Basically, they're all ranked. The number 1 is actually the lowest motion, not the highest motion. So as you get a higher number, these motions take precedence over other ones. So we start with our main motion at the bottom, and then we work up to like different amendments, referring to committees, all the way up to different motions for adjourning the meeting. And it kind of looks like, what are all these things? But we'll go over them starting next week when we have our freshmen, because it's going to be way over your head right now, and you're just going to get to hear it again next week. So are there any questions right now before I stop?
Are 13 and 14 the same?
that are different.
What's the difference though, like in the,
There's an at and a to.
There's not.
oh, you're right,
So,
there is a difference.
yeah, there is a difference.
I know
Very
that,
minor.
it just looked the
It's
same.
very minor, but they're very
Yeah.
different in what they do. But
Yeah.
we'll get to that.
Well, you should like capitalize it so you can see the
You can see
difference.
it. How about this? If somebody can come, so next week at our meeting, during my officer report, if anybody can tell me what the difference between these two are, and we haven't gone over it yet, but if you, in the next week, can find what these are, tell me what the difference is, I'll give you the prize. Does that sound cool?
When are the sign-up sheets for the hour we have to do?
We're gonna go over that probably starting next week,
Okay.
so that the freshmen can sign up for their office hour too.
Okay.
So, any other questions about Robert's Rules of Order? Okay, that's all I've got. So I'll let Chase come back up here and adjourn the meeting. Did you already adjourn the meeting, or?
Nope.
Okay. And I'll let you come and do that. So.
I adjourn this meeting at 4:26.